welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt and Dean here with the military medium. It's Dean McMurray, and this is your Daily Dose of Happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today, and we're going to get things started with an email from Daniel, who wrote in last week, and he was asking for a little bit of help. He's asked for some help in the past, but he asked for a little bit more this time around. He sent two different messages, one on Tuesday, and then on Friday in a show with Linda, I asked her to take a stab at it, and so she drew a card that, based on the email that we got as a follow-up from him afterward, pretty much hit the spot. But I figured I'd bring both of them in and let the military medium applaud his psychic magic wand and see what he can do. So anyway, here's what Daniel had to say. He says, I just figured that I would ask the Psychic Friends Network you've created here a question. He says, there's a lot of things up in the air in my life right now. It's not freaking me out too much, but I would like some guidance from the other side. Any help would be appreciated. Thank you. And he loves the show. Keep up the good work. And then as a follow-up to Friday's show, he wrote, I never asked this outright before, but I've always wondered. My dad died when I was 12. I've only had one visitation dream with him ever, shortly after he died. My grandma, however, is in my dreams quite a bit. I've set intentions to have visitations with him, and I don't need it. I guess I would just like to hear from him. Is there a reason why I haven't had a visitation from him, and is there anything I need to hear from anyone?
Love it. You know, and that last question, Walt, is one that is all too familiar, and all too often people ask why, I've set the intention for mom or dad or grandma or grandpa, and sometimes it's everybody but, the individual that you're wanting to step forward. And
right.
So everybody wanting to know why or, what's going on. So, and maybe I'm just not understanding the first one. Is he just wanting general guidance, from the other side?
Yeah, he was in the first email. He was very non-specific. He just said nothing particular was freaking him out, but he just wanted some guidance. In general.
Sure. Well, here's I guess, and Daniel's his name, correct? Right. So Daniel, here's the first thing that I get is when I connect to the energy around and when I'm listening to the other side, is the first thing that I feel is like I'm walking through Jello, right? And I know that sounds like an odd sensation, but it could be, and if I'm understanding this correctly, maybe some of the sensations that you're feeling right now, perhaps not getting the traction or the outcomes that you're wanting in life right now. So that in the aspect of walking through Jello, just kind of that slow-mo, just, whoa, everything is kind of thick and heavy, and it's like, what is going on? So, but the thing that I do hear very clearly, this is coming from a female on your mother's side of the family, and she has her hair more up, and you would think of the old-fashioned plastic curlers, right?
Right.
So with the old home firm type. So one of the things that I get with her is, she keeps on just saying, hang in there, because meaning, I'm understanding her to mean that this is just, just like everything else, we run in cycles, the same with energy. So if you're going through a little bit tougher time right now, just feeling like, and again, walking through Jello or things aren't manifesting quite the way that you want them at work or in life right now, just hang on, cause that change is coming up. It doesn't mean that you get to sit back though, because you do get kind of the finger. It's not she's not flipping you off, but it's kind of like the stern look. If you can see my finger, it's the pointer finger.
Well, actually it's a podcast. They can't see it. Only people who are watching YouTube can see it.
Well, yeah, if you're watching, I got my pointer finger out here, and it's kind of like that, stern, loving, like Kate trying to make a point and saying this isn't a time just to sit back. And I think we've talked about this on the show before, Walt, is about even if spirit and the universe are going to show up, you need to put things in action. And so get really clear on what you want and what you want to do, and then start taking steps to go after it. And that's the biggest thing, is making movement regardless, because I kind of feel like you're in some type of analysis paralysis and you're sitting in a cycle of spinning. That's what I feel like. Now I want to jump over very specifically. I want to go over to the aspect of, why now. Refresh me on the second question again, Walt. Sorry.
Yeah, sure. He says his father died when he was 12. He's only had one visitation with him. Wondered why. His grandmother has been in his dreams a lot, and of course it sounds like who you might be referring to there.
Right.
But why hasn't he heard from his father? And
Right.
Is there anything else that anybody else wants to tell him? And apparently somebody in the curler said, yes, here's something I want to tell you.
Right.
Stay with the program.
And stay with the program. Well, I really feel her guidance was the first part. However, obviously, could that be words of wisdom for the second aspect? Sure. But here's the thing, because the ego wants answers, and the ego wants connection one more time. I don't care who you are. We want to connect one more time. Because we love those individuals in
Sure.
spirit. And rightfully so. But here's the thing is, when we detach, or if you're able at some level to detach from the wanting, and I know that's hard to conceptualize, or the need to, I need you to come to me in spirit, in dream state, and just allow and saying, you know what, I trust that when it's time, it will. And I do get that there is, that your dad, Daniel, is going to show up in a bigger way. And it's kind of waiting for, I don't want to, I know what it might sound like, but it's almost waiting for you to catch up. And it's like coming into play in a later stage of your life with him in spirit, almost like a spirit teacher, if that makes sense. Ooh. And that's what I feel. So we're kind of coming, saying, understand that he's always there. It doesn't mean that he's left you. Hey, you're on your own. His spirit's always there. Whether you feel the connection or not. But the thing that I would share is I feel, and what I see is I'm shown kind of arcs of light that come out from your timeline and go forward of you and come back into the timeline in a future point or date and time. So I'm understanding is almost kind of like, hey, I'm waiting for you to catch up. I'm waiting for you for this time, whenever that is. And I don't get a date. But when that time kind of alignment, with the timeline, when it's supposed to be the divine timing aspect, when you step into that bigger role, whatever that is, then, I feel that you have this, almost kind of like reestablishing a relationship with your dad now in spirit, and it's completely different. I kind of go back to, when I first started developing, I never knew my grandmother on my dad's side, and where she showed up, and so did my grandfather briefly. And it was, not only was it very moving, but I had to learn how to have a relationship, in a sense, with a loved one, in spirit, and where she became a very big, part of my spiritual development. But, so anyways, for you though, Daniel, is, trust in that process, and try to find a space within yourself to not, and I know this might sound hard at the moment, but to, saying, hey, Dad, I know that you're there, but, trusting that when it's time, you're going to show up. And trying to have patience with that. That's the hardest part. It's like, come on already. What's up with this divine timing piece? And, we want to rush it along, but, there's something with it. And I always tell people, have patience. So I hope that answers his questions.
I think that's pretty good. I'm sure that he's going to get a lot of value out of that. And you raise, actually, we could probably do a show on what you raised there for a topic, because you bring up the idea of, how did you phrase it? Trying to disconnect from wanting. And
Yeah.
you're right. That is a tough thing to learn to do.
Yeah.
It's something that even when you learn it, you still end up having to relearn it.
You do.
It gets easier over time. I mean, you get better at it over time.
You got to be really, in my experience, well, at least for me, I guess, I have to be really conscious about it. I haven't got to the point, thus far to be just like, oh yeah, I'm just being, and, I'm just, I still have that part of me that I want this. And then I try to reach for it. And the more I reach for it, the further it escapes my reach. And what I found was, for me personally, the more I let go and just allowed the process to happen, the more I was connected to the true source of, I guess, the situation or the journey, right? And where it was easier to connect when it was time, instead of making something that it was not. Because there was an aspect, whether I want to admit it or not, of my own ego and my own brain that was trying to construct something that I wanted in a way that I wanted it presented. Mm. And so whether that was a connection to a loved one, whether that was a connection to getting spirit information in the way that I wanted it, and the universe is like, hello, have you met us? It's like, we will give you what you need when you need it, and in the way, that you will understand it, not the way you think, And that was so interesting, because so many times when I would get on my own personal high horse or an emotional roller coaster, that I would be quintessentially smacked in the face and kind of taught to eat some humble pie and be like, hello, I kind of sound like a teenager, but, in a sense of just like, do you know, so yeah, kind of interesting.
One thing that I've kind of learned over time, and I'm still learning to apply it, but I find it's pretty effective. If I know that I'm kind of grasping and hanging on to something and it's slowing me down, I try to remind myself, I know of a lot of different ways to what we call raise the vibration, get into a happier place. And I aim to do that specifically in those situations, because when I'm in a happier place, when I'm in the happier place, it's easier to let go of stuff. It's just easier to not only feel good about what's going on, but it's also easier to just to let go of it, to not be so worked up and caught up in whether or not the thing has happened yet. To actually feel good with what's going on leading up to it. And when we're able to let go that way, when we're able to feel good enough that we can let go, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, it just gets easier. And that's what I was trying to express a moment ago. Over time, it does get easier, so the more that we get into that higher flying place, the more that it gets easier. It gets easier to get easier.
Right,
is what I'm trying to say.
Right. Well, and I think a thing to remember too is, I think you find your own way through it. Like, you navigate your own maybe challenges or obstacles, because there's so many things that are unique unto the individual. And sometimes maybe what Walt or Dean McMurray experiences as obstacles are different than maybe somebody like Daniel or somebody else out there, right? And so like you share, Walt, is over time, it gets a little bit easier, because I think you learn through trial and error.
Lots of it.
Lots of saying, ooh, I've come across this before. Let me, but a lot, it's like, whether you have a lot of patience or not, but of course everybody's going to go, patience, grasshopper, right? And it's like, right. You can be impatient all you want, and it's like the ketchup that's not leaving the bottle. You just got to wait until it's time. It's like, hello. It's like kind of one of those things. It looks like an old Heinz commercial, right?
Right.
So
that's funny.
I don't know why I went to the ketchup analogy, but hey, that's what popped in my head. So
Hey, you also mentioned something else, paralysis by analysis,
Oh,
which is
paralysis analysis. Yeah.
which is something I'm very familiar with,
Yeah.
because I was caught in that trap for years, and I still can get into that trap if I'm not really
Yep.
careful. With a lot of help from fellow co-hosts, including Joel Elston, who was on the show for many years. I finally have mostly let go of that, but boy, oh boy, that can really hold you back. And it's a great way to kind of latch on to, oh God, why hasn't it shown up here? Well, I'll just keep analyzing this thing to death, because if I just analyze it to death, I'll find a way around it. And of
Right.
course, that doesn't play that way, but that's what the brain tells you, right?
Right. No, absolutely. And, I think that's, a great reminder that, whether you have, how do I want to say it? A great network around you that tends to push you out of your comfort zone and saying, just do it already. There's a million self-help books out there. And I was listening to one on audio. It was something about Napoleon Hill, but they were, about the aspect of analysis paralysis and got to have everything figured out. And they're why, when your why is big enough, the how shows up. And there's so many of us that gets in the weeds, myself included, at times, and be like, well, how does that look? Like, I need to see it, because I'm a visual guy. And so, if I understand it in a visual means, then I would probably be more on board, but other times maybe I'm very hesitant. The interesting aspect of, when, I got a tremendous wife that, kind of, gives me a lovingly boot in the butt at times, and was like, what are you waiting for to do that? And then I'm like, I don't know. And then sometimes, is it analysis paralysis? Sometimes. Other times, do I feel that maybe not all the pieces are together? Yeah, sometimes there's a divine timing aspect, but if you're not sure, you can take steps to move forward with it. Doesn't mean that you have to certainly pick up the proverbial football and run towards a touch. Just picking something up and making steps towards that goal are gonna, change it. It changes the dynamic of the energy. And when you do that, you're changing the trajectory and the outcome, because you're making a step or steps to whatever outcome you want. But, and if it's not time, then it's not going to work out at that point. But I always say, sometimes it's mired in procrastination. And I always call when my wife tries to call me out on that, I'm like, my dear, that's divine timing. It's not procrastination.
Yeah, we got an excuse for everything.
Yeah. That's usually what I hear. I usually hear some colorful words too, but no. But you got it. You know what? I think they always say behind great people, there's even greater people supporting them. And I think there is no truer statement to that, because you got to have your cheerleaders, but you also need to have folks that will call you out on your own BS. So whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, whether it's a great spouse or significant loved one, whatever it is, find that person that can call you out. And, you may not like it. And I'm not saying things that you like. And, there's a difference between me being mean and calling you out, but saying, we don't want to, sometimes when saying, hey, you're sitting there spinning about this, what are the details, right? And you just need to do it. And saying, you know what, thanks for giving me the push, because I wouldn't have got that book done if you wouldn't have given me the push. I wouldn't have got that, whatever it was, done, or I wouldn't have taken steps to reach out and do that or connect, or, and it can pay off huge dividends to people. It's like, how much, what is it worth to somebody, I guess. But anyways.
You gave me two interesting thoughts there. as you were describing that so beautifully. The first thought was about taking those initial steps. And I think one thing, I know this is true, this was true for me. It's not so much anymore, but at one point it was definitely true for me. I would be afraid of taking those first few steps, thinking I'd go in the wrong direction. I'd take steps that wouldn't work. Like you said, I mean, they don't always work out right, which can be, that can stop you all by itself, just by anticipating, oh, well, yeah, but what if I take the wrong steps?
Right.
And it wasn't until I started doing this show and talking to people like you, like Joel, like Linda, like Cindy, like Wendy, all these other people that I've talked with over the years, is I began to learn it doesn't matter. When you start taking your steps and they're going in the wrong direction, you get all these signs saying, hey, you're going in the wrong direction. It's the other way, bud.
Right.
And you just have to pay attention for, the various signs that come your way. And it doesn't take long. It comes pretty darn quickly.
I guess I have a question when it comes to that, though, Walt. Is there really a wrong direction?
Not really,
no. It might not. I mean, granted, whatever you're going towards, whatever goal, if you go in the opposite direction, it might show up, or it might take longer for you to accomplish it if you take different turns.
If you're heading from New York to Los Angeles and you find yourself heading toward Boston, that's pretty much the wrong direction. But all you have to do is turn around, you'll still get to Los Angeles. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility yet,
So I got a interesting story talking about wrong direction. So I was in northeastern North Dakota, up by the Canadian border, doing readings one summer. And it was for a group of people. And I was there all day, 8 hours. It was crazy. But it was expected severe storms. And of course, we get a lot of tornadoes as well. And it was interesting. They had heavy rains and winds, all that great stuff. And as soon as I got done the last reading, the tornado sirens, which were right by this people's house, started going off. And I was like, well, I guess that's my cue, and finished up and said my goodbyes. I'm out of here. And it was raining so hard I couldn't see. And I knew that there was it was a proverbial crossroads where I came at the stop sign. It was left or right. And all I said was, I kind of looked up, at the heavens, if you will, and I said, I need a little help here. I knew that there was, tornadoes in the area. I knew the weather was super nasty. And I said, I could use some help here, and, kind of saying a prayer. And so I just felt guided to take a right. I went well over an hour out of my way of this drive. I was like, I have no clue where I was.
Right. And
I was like, and raining cats and dogs. Well, here to come to find out, and when I finally come to a town, right, I was like, how did I end up here? And I was driving through God knows where. Right. And when I looked at the radar, when I finally pulled out my, like GPS or whatever, here, if I would have taken a left instead of a right, I would have been in front of the supercell storm that moved through. Yeah. But instead I took a right, and I went way out. And what I did was allowed the storm to kind of come through, and then I came in behind it.
Right.
And it was just serendipitous. So proverbially, by taking the wrong turn, if you will, in a sense, it saved me. So there was no wrong turn. It was like, yeah, I added some time to your schedule or, your route, but yeah, you came back out where you wanted to. And so I guess that brings me to, the question, is there really any wrong turn? I might take you longer to get to your goal. Like it took me, well over an extra hour to get home that night, but I was safe. And, or maybe in somebody else's, scenario, maybe they didn't lose something financially. Maybe there was something, health-wise, maybe, emotionally, whatever it was.
Oh, yeah.
Kind of, a lot of people, we look at it from but it added to my discomfort or my, and, sometimes we can be a lot more, how do I want to say it? It wouldn't be, we can be in a much the scenario could be much heavier or much more severe sometimes if we're not maybe in a quintessentially taking the wrong turn or a detour. How about we call it a detour instead of the wrong turn?
Well, that led to a thought that came into my head. I mean, you heard the tornado sirens and elected to go home. I mean, you could have just as easily decided, I'm hearing tornado sirens. Where's the nearest cellar?
Right.
And waited the storms out. There are plenty of signs that come along the way, but your point is a valid one that there really is not a wrong direction. Very often we are guided to the better place. Louise and I experience that when we're traveling all the time. We'll be driving along on a super highway, and for whatever reason, she'll get the idea, well, let's go get lunch now, even though, it's an hour away from lunch, but we'll go get lunch now. And so we'll get off the highway, and then we can't get back onto the highway. And we're taking this long detour. And when we finally get back on the highway, we find that we just left this massive 25-mile block.
Yeah.
Like, okay. How did we do that?
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Even though I was cussing the whole time. Thank you.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Can you imagine?
I think.
Can't you imagine some divine entity going, you'd think these guys would be grateful, right?
Right.
And I think that brings up a great point is that like in the moment when we're like, oh, I can't believe it. We can't even get back on and we're frustrated and, maybe we're hot and we're tired and it's like, I just want to go home. And we know it's the shortest route, but yet the universe is playing such a big game from 30,000 feet or whatever, right? They see the big picture. And we only see this tiny, minuscule piece and saying, yeah, but by keeping you from doing this, we're really allowing you to, to come in contact with many more riches, whether that's not get stuck in this traffic jam, whether accident, whatever.
Yeah, so and you use the right word there, gratitude. Because it's a hard thing to learn at first, but if we can learn, and Louise and I, again, we try to do this whenever we run into it. If you run into a block in the road, literally, your road that you're driving on is blocked for whatever reason, and you have to go around it. Say thank you. I know you're trying to guide me away from something. I don't know what it is. I don't think I even want to know what it is, but thank you.
Right. Well, and that's the other thing too is like, so I love playing a game, I call it the traffic light game, right? And so what I try to do is I try to feel into and connect to the energy of the electricity and the mechanics of the traffic light, right? And so, trying to feel when it's going to turn green, all this stuff. And almost sometimes you can get it where you go for miles and it's all green. I'm just, going, thank you. Oh my God, this is cool. But then there's other times when you're in a rush and red light. Oh, yeah. And I'm like, hey, that's just a reminder that you need to stop and breathe and say thank you and saying, you know what? It's okay. We're going to get there in time. There's nothing I can do. We're just going to continue, and we're not going to speed, so kind of being in that gratitude of letting go, because it would be very easy to be going, oh my God, I can't believe I hit this red light and we're going to be late and we left the house. We should have left the house 20 minutes ago. And here we are. It's like, let's just go, let's tone it down a bit and go, let's think about
the road rage. You also get yourself in a place where you can get a better result, which is,
right.
My God, how about that?
Well, and so many times that I have found when I start showing some gratitude in that aspect and finding a space of inner peace that, a lot of cool things happen. It's almost like, and I don't know if you've had this experience, Walt, but have you ever had a moment of like lost time? And in a sense of like where you like, wait a minute, that I've driven this route several times before and it's always taken approximately, if I drive the speed limit, approximately this length of time to drive it. How did I get from here to there in significantly shorter amount of time?
Yes.
And your mind is just like short circuiting, like I can't compute, and we know it's something bigger than us. And so it's interesting that it's almost like when you shift dimensions, I don't know, open a portal. I don't know what happens, but
I don't
sometimes,
know either, but it's odd.
Yeah.
It's, especially if you're really cognizant of what's going on. And there have been a few times where I haven't been quite so cognizant, but I can remember one where I was aware, I was conscious completely. And it was just a little trip from where we live to where the nearest Walmart is. It's basically just you go down one road, hang a right, and you go out probably about 3 miles or so, and it's on the left there. And I took that right. I started going on the road, and I mean, I know that whole road. I know everything. I know all the traffic lights. I know the traffic pattern. It's, it's a state highway. It's not difficult to know everything that's there. And I got to like the first or second marker, so to speak, out of maybe 7 or 8 markers. Yeah. And then as I'm looking at the fact that I'm at that marker, all of a sudden I'm at the second to last marker. Like bang! Like, wait a minute, what just happened? I mean, that should have taken another 5 minutes, and it didn't. Right. What just happened? And it spooked me. Right. Because
it's like, did I black out? Did I? Right. Yeah. Did I?
Well, I did. I asked myself exactly that question. Was I just unconscious? Was I just like, auto driving? You can get into that auto driving mode? No, I wasn't. I know I wasn't. That's what freaked me out. I knew that I was very aware of everything that I was doing at that point. Right. I was not in that driving in that fog where you automatically drive your way there. Right. I was very conscious, and bang, all of a sudden I was in this other place. Like, whoa, what was that?
Well, and then when I have that experience, then I'm like, hey, can we do that on longer distance? Can I do that? Can we do that? And
let's knock the 2-hour trip down to 20 minutes. It makes it a whole lot nicer.
God, that'd be cool. I won't tell anybody.
Right.
Yeah, be like, boy, that really cut down on some gas. Yeah, it is so fascinating, but it's usually what I have found though. The correlation is, at least for me personally, is when I have experienced that, I have always been in a state of gratitude. It's like everything aligned up, right? It's like all the green lights, everything was like go, all systems go, right? And it's just like all the boxes were checked at that moment. The planets aligned, whatever, for whatever reason. And whether, whether I drove into a portal or whatever, maybe some ET flipped a switch. I don't know, but it's like, hey, let's mess with this one. Yeah. It's like, it's like, whoa, check that out. And they got a good laugh. It's like,
it sounds like a Far Side cartoon, right?
Yeah, right. Where they're cutting maybe sections out of the road and like making it shorter or something.
Let's mess with the aliens day, right?
Right. I don't know. But yeah, that is just a very cool phenomenon, and I don't know, it's just really cool to experience and then trying to figure it out. After a while, it's just like my brain starts to melt, and it's like, why do you need to figure it out? Like, just enjoy it.
I think there's just a piece of us that wants to know.
I know.
But you're right. At some point, the brain just kind of derails, and so you kind of fall into the place of, well, I don't know what the answer is, so I guess I'll just go with it. You kind of give up after a while.
Well, and let's talk about that for a minute, like the brain figuring stuff out. So things that are super, super complex, like uber, like crazy, out of this world complex. And I don't know if you've had this experience as well, Walt, but there has been moments where I've thought about it and hashed over, like trying to even imagine and understand of it. And it's all of a sudden, like all the puzzle pieces come together, and this is not a psychic medium thing. It's just like, I don't know, it's like a cosmic understanding, right? It's like if you were all of a sudden given the meaning of the universe, whatever, in an instant, but as soon as it's given, it's taken away. And it's just like, no, because it's like an all-knowing. It's like, oh my God.
It's like right on the tip of your tongue. Yeah.
And trying to remember it, it's like, what was that? And it's just all jumbled again. It's just like all these pieces. And it's like, oh my God, everything just made sense just for a split hair of a second.
Right.
And, a nanosecond. And I was like, oh, how do I connect to that again? Maybe I threw it out the window when I went through that little time warp. I don't know.
Hey, you never know.
Did some universal littering, maybe. I don't know.
I love it. Universal littering.
I don't know. Yeah. You know how fast you were going?
I mentioned earlier there were two things that I wanted to respond to.
Yeah.
One we just talked about. The other one, you made a reference to, it's good to have people who you trust. This is my way of saying it rather than the way you said it, but basically people you trust who can speak truth to you, so to speak.
Yes.
And I wanted to pile on with that one because that ties in really nicely with the theme of these talks that I've been putting together for doing public speaking.
Yes.
Because my dual theme is building self-love and building social connectedness. This is the social connectedness piece. And I want to emphasize it because one thing I didn't know early on was the tremendous value in extending the social network and building the depth of the social network.
Right.
And realizing that, I was very glad when I met Louise, for instance, and I relied heavily on that relationship, and she relied heavily on it as well. But she really figured out earlier than I did, we needed to have other people in the social network to rely on. Because you can rely too much on that one person.
Right, right. That you could get burnt out. You don't,
Well, maybe not so much the burnout. You just need the diversity.
Sure.
The primary relationship has always remained great for us. We've never had an issue with that. Mm-hmm. But relying solely on the primary relationship, that's not a really good thing because you don't grow very well that way.
Right.
You need to have the additional inputs from other perspectives. That's one of the reasons why I like to do this show the way I do it with all the different co-hosts. I get so many different perspectives on this broad subject that we do.
Sure.
That I just learn by leaps and bounds, and I know the audience does as well. But when you limit yourself to one or two like that, they may be deep, and that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good having that depth of relationship. You just don't get the breadth of it. The breadth is where a lot of it comes into it. Similarly, you don't want to have a broad series of relationships, none of which are deep. You got to have both. Both components have to be in there. But I want to get more of your take on that.
I was going to also say with that is, there's some people, and I was going to bring this on the converse aspect, saying, okay, Dean, Walt, that's great. I love the aspect of building a social aspect, but guess what? Don't really have any friends, maybe have a couple coworkers, maybe they're going to college, Walt. Maybe saying, yeah, I know a couple people in my classes, but we're really not friends. And I wouldn't really call them what I would say is my cheerleaders. And maybe, so maybe they don't have a lot of people in their corner. What would you say to the individuals out there that maybe really doesn't have a organic core of cheerleaders to either give, support them, give them truth when they need it, and provide a safe space for them?
That was a question that I had to face head on early on and failed to come up with an answer for the longest time. But it's also one of the feeders that led me to my current talk, because the reason I have those two aspects to the current talk is that one feeds the other. The idea of building self-love, one of the great advantages of building your self-love is that it also builds your self-confidence.
Right.
And as your self-confidence grows, self-confidence is attractive. It's not just sexually attractive. It's also relationship, friend attractive, personality attractive. We talk about it. They don't use the word too much anymore, but it used to be a popular term, charisma. Somebody who had charisma.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Somebody who had charisma. Nobody could really say what it was. But
that's more of a masculine term. Yeah.
Usually, yeah.
Yeah, it's more of a masculine term, so you don't have to say another, like, somebody that you're, I don't want to say non-attractive, but it doesn't sound as sexualized, I guess, as attractiveness, or they're very attractive. There's something attractive, but they could say they got charisma. They got they got pizzazz, right?
They got the it factor. That was the phrase for a while.
Yeah.
Well, the it factor is confidence, self-confidence. And when you have self-confidence, people just find you. Right. So if you really want to use the law of attraction in order to expand the network from a point where you don't really have much of a network, that's where building the self-love really, really helps. because all of a sudden people start noticing you who weren't noticing you before.
Right. Right.
And that's a big deal, especially if you're somebody like me. I mean, I was like the super introvert of all time. You know, I was the wallflower that was so wallflower that he was hiding behind the wallflowers. I mean, it was not a pretty sight, let me tell you. And if I had only understood this one thing, the value of building self-love, it would have made a huge difference in my life. I actually, at the time, if you had asked me, I would have said, well, of course I love myself. And the fact is, we do. We all do. We love ourselves to one degree or another, perhaps, but we all do. But what we fail to recognize is just because we have X amount of self-love doesn't mean we can't have X plus 5 or X plus 10 or X plus 100 or 1,000 or 10,000 or whatever. We can still have more of it.
Right.
And the sort of the corollary that goes along with my self-love theorem, if you will, is that when you reach a certain point, a certain saturation point, everything above that, in terms of the self-love that you build, just spills out all over the place. In a good way, in a very good way.
Right.
And then, I mean, it's almost impossible. That's where you have to start, beating them off with a stick. It's the opposite experience from what you were describing, and the experience that I knew very, very well, where you don't have a network going on. There's nobody that you can think of. I used to complain about that regularly, quite a bit when I was younger, about how there's nobody I would even trust to tell anything to share anything with. Right. And what I didn't realize was I kept telling myself that story over and over again. And so by the law of attraction, I got it.
Right.
If I had realized that, I probably would have at least switched the story around, even if I didn't know how self-love worked.
Right.
But I didn't even know that much was true. And so I just kept setting myself up over and over and over again. There's nobody I can talk to. There's nobody I can trust. There's nobody who's there to help me. Mm-hmm. I remember reading Napoleon Hill. You mentioned him, Think and Grow Rich. Yeah. He mentions the mastermind, right? He brings up the mastermind concept.
Group,
And so I thought, oh, great. I'll create a mastermind group. Didn't have the faintest clue how to create it, because I didn't understand the value of self-confidence or self-love. And I didn't understand the importance of not telling the story over and over again about how I didn't have anybody in my social circle. If I had known those two things, I would have had that mastermind group in a snap. But I didn't have it because I had it all twisted around. I had it all turned around backwards. Right. So that's what I would say to him. What would you say? Yeah.
Well, I completely agree with what you're saying. The other aspect too is that, we're always surrounded by people, and whether you're in school or whether you're in business, there's people there, and they really own different titles. So, you have these different career coaches. There's different folks that are there to listen. And some of them, I think are better, I'm sure, than others. Some will just, hey, you're paying me. Yep, I'm going to be a yes man. Others are going to be like, dude, until you change your story, you're not going to, you're not going to move forward. So, and then of course there's obviously, if you need to talk to, if you absolutely have no one and you're still working on that self-love, you can also, maybe start with a school counselor, or, your counselor or whatever, somebody in your corner at least, that is, they may be very neutral, but at least it's going to be a start for you. But start somewhere. But I think self-love is huge. And I would completely concur with what Walt is saying, because that is the ultimate path that is going to lead to what I would call the biggest riches, where, the biggest, networking, whether it's, really, ultimately the love that you show for yourself. That really is the biggest thing. It's not other people. It's the love that you share with yourself. So.
Oh yeah, we're the biggest beneficiaries of that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We are. It not only our emotional state, but our physical states, our, everything, is a residual byproduct to self-love. And, our paychecks, in fact, did a interview with a veteran entrepreneur, kind of a coach guy that I know yesterday. And we talked about in length about he designed a program called, Design Your Own Paycheck, and really about that invisible number over each of our heads, what we believe our self-worth is, and about, where do you start to change that? Because if I went up to somebody in high school to say, how much do you believe that, you should get paid at a job when you get out of high school? And they may say $30,000 or whatever the case is, right? Mm-hmm. And so, it's interesting. If I went up to some adults, how much money do you believe that you should make, or that you're worth, maybe more importantly, surprisingly, I think that number would be way low.
Yeah.
And, and it's, but there's a lot of stories. Not only do we tell ourselves about money, but that we choose to believe because we've been told, money's the root of all evil. It's gonna, big numbers go to your head. That's all ego, blah, blah, blah. Stories go on and on, instead of going, no, damn it, you're worth that and more.
Right.
So why not change that number? And it doesn't have anything to do about money. That's the funny part. Right. It does, but it doesn't. And it's all about self-worth. And the more, again, you go back to the core principles of what you're talking about, Walt, about self-love, self-value, the more you build upon that, then it expands and flows over, right? And that next promotion shows up, being like, hey, Walt, we'd love to have you head up our department. I know it's a step up from where you've been for the past few years, but, we just love your energy. We love, so they, again, you got the charisma, you got the moxie, kid, right? The old,
right.
And why would they pick somebody that is mopey and not positive to be around? Nobody, no. And, even if you're good at what you do, and right. Understandably, you got to have the skills to back that up, but, at the same time, you got to perform at the next level, get that. But at the same time, we've all seen it time and time again. The person that has a charisma, typically, beats out somebody that, maybe has less experience, but has, that energy about them, that, they have a confidence and be like, yeah, I could really see myself training this individual. I know they'll be great. I know they'll take charge. I know they'll do awesome. I know they'll take the company to the next level. Why wouldn't they hire them? So, or give them the promotion.
As you were talking there, it did occur to me, there is one thing specifically about money that will influence us as we get older to accept a lower valuation of ourselves. And that's just simply the nature of money as it currently operates, because money is expansionary. The money supply is constantly expanding. And what that ends up doing is that over time, the purchasing power reduces. So if I look back to when I was growing up, at what, $1,000 bought compared to what $1,000 buys now, it's a very significant difference,
Yes.
It's
tremendous.
like 5 to 10 times different from what it was when I was growing up. If we don't adjust our minds to right. recognize that monetary value is shifting constantly, that the purchasing power is probably not all that different now compared to then, maybe a little bit less when you take into account that people tend to make more money and so forth. But the mindset about the dollar amount, that's the thing that you can kind of get hung up on. So you have to keep adjusting that over time, recognizing, the purchasing power in terms of the dollar amount is changing. And we have to adjust ourselves to keep up with that and even surpass it once we realize through self-love. That's where the self-love piece really comes in. It becomes easier to just, dive into, oh yeah, I'm worth X. And before I was settling for X divided by 10. The self-love just makes it easier to do that.
Well, to be really honest, I think personally for me, I think, we give way too much of our emotional energy away into the energy of what money is. Mm-hmm. And money really is just a physical object, It really has no, when you really look at it, it's just a piece of paper, that an organization gives its worth to, right? It's got the denomination on it. The aspect of, you know, when we take away the emotional energy or attachment to it and really look at it as a tool to do, what can I do with, you talk about the money, like, so if, 20 years ago, $1,000 or even 50 years ago, $1,000 in 1970, like you said, was worth way more than it is now. I get that.
Yeah.
Even $20, right? $20,
right.
you thought you were rich. You could buy
20
tons.
was a lot of money at that point.
Oh,
yeah.
you buy the penny candy aisle right out with that. And there's probably a penny what? Maybe I'm dating myself now.
That's the $1 Milky Way that you're talking about.
You get $1 and you thought you went to heaven. Even 25 cents sometimes. But the thing that I would share is, even a quarter, right? A quarter was like, here you go, Sonny, and you got it from grandpa or even mom or dad. And that was huge. I think about that too, like growing up, a tooth, let's just say this. I know it's abstract, but, it's like, a tooth. I was lucky to get a quarter. Now, good Lord, like a tooth is going like for $1. I mean, making like, and I get it. That's all up to what parents can afford. And they set that and that's your own personal deal. But, I think it's just interesting because money changed, but really again, getting back to it, if we detach from the emotional attachment from money, and for me personally, to look at it as a tool and saying how many tools, well, I don't, it sounds kind of weird, but instead of going, oh my God, that's $1,000. Well, really it's, boy, you really can't buy much anymore. And granted, I get that, but, does your way of thinking need to stay fluent? Absolutely. But sometimes too, if you think about it, a lot of stresses, a lot of things in the world start. And one of the biggest things is financial stresses.
Oh, yeah.
And it's because the emotional attachment of, in fact, was less than a half an hour ago. I cut a pretty significant check for a guy that just left doing, some texture and sheetrock stuff. I mean, it was, but again, it was like, okay, he did quality work. He put in his time, but, go back to, again, if you went back to 1970, what would that same work be? I don't know. Of course I was just a kid, but, maybe was that 300, 200 back then? And that was a tremendous amount of money.
It was, yeah.
Be like, oh my God, you're going to charge me, now that's, approaching 2,000, it's like the same work, it's like, I don't know, maybe I'm 200, maybe I'm,
no, it's not. You're not that
too
far
low,
off. I mean, when you look at the numbers, I've actually studied it, and you're 10 times over for that time period. That's easily, it may be closer to 15 to 20 times over. But the point is that it does happen, and I think there's another component that we ought to touch on in the last minute or two here, and that is the energetic component, because that's what money really is. Money is energy.
Yep.
Energy is money, and money is energy. It's a way of exchanging energies. It's a way of exchanging our best efforts and our abilities and our ways to contribute to each other's lives, but it's energetic. And when we think about it that way, now it becomes easier to kind of let go of that number. I was going through, I haven't done my first public speech that I get paid for yet, right? But I had to set a price for it, and I sat down to figure out that pricing, and I really didn't know what to price it. So I started, checking out other speakers to see what they charge and so forth. And at first I had a little sticker shock. Yeah. And I thought about it, I said, there's a lot of work that goes into getting those gigs.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that goes into preparing to talk. There's a lot of work, and I just kept working it out and realized, the kind of numbers that they were putting out there actually made sense. Right. It wasn't just like big, cash grab. It was, okay, yeah. I mean, it really does cost that much.
It
you really
does.
do have to collect that kind of money, you know?
It does. Well, and a lot of people don't realize and especially we're living in a different time as well. And there's a lot of different associated costs too when doing professional work, even like myself, right? And, when people talk about, being a medium, well, it doesn't matter if you're a medium or a speaker, but
Right.
Whatever your industry is, I guess. And when you look at that, there's a lot of associated costs. So, talking about maybe for me, for example, there's, their websites and maintenance of scheduling platforms and, because I don't have a staff, it's just me, right? And and then office supplies and, I guess memberships to, online web platforms to be able to do what so things that are business aids or business supplies, things to help you conduct the business and provide the services to people out there looking for it. And then same with, I talked about that contractor that was this here. He, in fact, was just, kind of, pretty proud of the fact that he just bought a new compressor and, that stuff's expensive. And, and it's an investment, for the individual's business and it helps them do a better job of what they do. And, so there's all kinds of different industries, but yeah. So when you talk about speakers, absolutely. There's always, whether somebody is doing professional development, taking courses or learning to speak better, whatever the case is, right? They're reading books. They're maintaining websites. There's the time because so many times, good Lord, I know I've been there a million times myself. As an entrepreneur, we're great when we come to small business about accounting for all the business aids, business supplies, all the bits and pieces except one piece, our damn time. And that is valuable as well. And regardless if you're directly working with a client or not.
That's right.
And so when you're actually putting that on paper, the first person that's got to be okay with that number again starts with you. Because if you don't believe in the price that you're kicking out, and I know I've had this issue with myself in the past, then you're going to be kind of squeamish about talking about it. Okay. But if somebody goes, well, what do you charge? And if you just come out and go, well, Joan, I charge $10,000 per speaking engagement, whatever the price is. I don't care if it's 10 grand, 5 grand, whatever. Wherever you're at, that's okay. And if they go, oh my goodness, and saying, well, I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's the price. And if you choose to change your pricing, that's up to you. But here's what I'm going to share. Again, it goes back to self-value. It goes back to what you believe in. You have to believe in you and your product. And if you don't, then you won't be able to sell the price of whatever you're trying, whether it's you coming across as a speaker and asking, so much money per speaking engagement, or as a psychic medium and so much per, reading or whatever you do, or, again, maybe contractor in each job, right? And maybe it changes with the,
there could be lots of
your bid.
factors.
Yeah, it maybe, but here's what I'm saying. If you don't believe in you, your customer won't, because it won't feel it. It'd be like, oh, well, he's not confident or she's not confident, and saying, why would I hire them? They're not, they were just, they were like, it felt like they were reaching, they were needy,
Exactly.
And the other times that I thought, God, I'm going to help a client or, people out. And I will say this is, I have, my readings are significantly higher maybe than some others. But here's what I'm going to share is there was a time, maybe not that long ago, maybe 6-8 months ago, that I dropped the prices on, I don't know, I think it was half-hour readings, something. And I thought, oh my God, it was right when COVID first started, I think it was, or something. And I'd just do this crazy sale and, not only generate some income, but also give people a break that been wanting readings. Guess what? I think I had one person take me up on it.
Yeah.
And I was really kind of perplexed, and I don't know why, but I kind of said something to my wife, and she was like, "Well, you know why, don't you?" And I was like, "No." She was like, "Because it comes off needy. Like, you know, if your prices are X and then all of a sudden you drop them, it's like all of a sudden people don't see the value in your product."
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, I'm not saying that you can't have sales, not saying that you can't give away things or whatever you would like to do as a business owner. I'm just saying is, you know, if you take away, and it's so interesting, the psychology of it, but when you're genuinely trying to give people a break and saying, I'm just going to significantly, maybe it's over 50% off, whatever. And sometimes it's just like, really? Yeah. Like, you're saving hundreds of dollars and you're not going to take, and it's just like, okay, well, fine. And then later on, then you increase it up to full price and saying, well, if you would have a week ago, I had these on sale for, you know, whatever it was.
Right.
And it really kind of interesting, but I do know for a fact people at times, appreciate or get more out of services if they have to wait, say something's very significantly priced and they really want to do it. Say maybe, well, let's just say a concert. Mm-hmm. And it's like, ooh, those prices are so pricey, but I love Cher. I want to go see Cher. I want front row, whatever, but they're hundreds of dollars. Oh my goodness. I don't know if I can afford that. But if they save and be like, you know what, this is several months out. Hopefully we still have tickets. And they're saving and they're saving and they're saving and they finally get enough to go out and have a fun night at a Cher concert. And they buy the tickets and it's a significant purchase for them. Typically, right. Maybe they don't have maybe a lot in the way of financial means, but they make the commitment to do that because it's something that they want to do. And I have found from experience that people get more from that because they are making more of a commitment. It meant more to them to save.
They're emotionally as well as financially invested.
Yes. And they're like, we're all in. We want to, and I will take the time to save to make that bigger purchase than, you know, and I'm not saying that, you know, folks that get the nosebleeds at a cheaper price can't enjoy the same show. I'm just saying there is something about the people that, you know, saying, you know what? Wow. That's a huge, huge commitment, but wow. I really want to save. I really want to do this. And typically it's something that we can't afford, but we really want to do this.
It's a good point.
You know,
it's a great way to bring the show to a close today. So thank you for making that. It was really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thank you very much. And thank you, especially to Daniel, to send in your question because look what it led to. It was really, really good. Make sure you use the LOA Today app to send in your questions as well. And Dean, we'll see you next week. Absolutely. I just want to add, Walt, and remind everybody out there that at LOA Today, we see you, we love you, and thanks for your questions. Excellent. I love the way you summarize that. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody. Have a great day.